Hello, everybody. Welcome to Talk the Walk here on Boss Rush Podcast. I'm your current host at the moment, Mr. Eddie B, the excited and enlightened one. Joining me is the celestial brush herself, Mr. Celeste Roberts.
Ooh, I wish I could paint.
Ah, yes. And, of course, the retrovaniac himself, Mr. Billy Holiday.
Hello, thank you once again for having me around. I can't believe it. I couldn't believe you guys had me back once, twice, now I'm back again.
What? Isn't there a song that goes along those lines?
Yeah. But you're not three times the lady, so
I'm not.
So, well, everybody, yes, we are back. I know we have been gone for a bit, but there's a lot of stuff that we had to walk through. Trust me.
Yes.
To get to this point. So, but if you guys will see that we are talking about everybody's gone to the Rapture. This game is, we're going to really get into this game. It was developed by the Chinese Room. Published by now this is the PS4 version. It was published by Sony Computer Entertainment, and it was available on Sony PlayStation in August of 2015, and Microsoft Windows on April 16. But I think it's available in a lot of places right now. This is one of venture walking game in the single player. But Celeste is going to be taking over on this portion to discuss this game. So Celeste, I place it in your hands.
That's a lot of pressure there, Ed. Oh my goodness. Well, you guys might be aware that the Chinese Room are also known for their games Dear Esther.
Yes. Which is that's the OG right there. A lot of people consider.
Yeah, Corsicovia and their mods for Half-Life 2. So this game, I first saw it in 2016. My boyfriend was just playing through it, and I thought it was the prettiest game I have ever seen in my life. Yeah,
and it's amazing because it's not even like it's a recent game. It's about 4 or 5 years, I think 5 or 6 years on it now, and on the PS4, and it is still to this day, even in the day and age now of the PS5, it's still the nicest looking game. I think I personally have sat down and played. It's amazing that they were able to pull this off. And I played it on the PC this past time, and I played that thing, pretty optimized on there. And it's wonderful. And we'll talk about it. A lot of it lends itself to the setting of the game, which I'm sure we'll talk more about as we go along.
Yeah, I played it on PlayStation 4, and I don't know, it's very weird because now knowing that they did Dear Esther and then going to this game, it's just like, okay, I can see the graphical look and everything. I think Dear Esther looks better than this game.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I think it's because of Dear Esther being all in one area. It's just different parts of it and everything put together. I'm like, oh, this is very visual and very appealing. I think because everybody's going to the Rapture is so open, it looks like it looks like I know this is an indie game, but I'm just like, it looked like you guys didn't have the time to put more detail in some stuff. It's a great game though, but I think it's just like it's so open that they went to be more ambitious, and it just didn't work out graphically for me. But it's still a great game. Still looks.
Well, I appreciate all the viewpoints because I really appreciate that, Ed, because I hadn't thought of it that way. So. Maybe Dear Esther is in the future. OG. So I think just to inform listeners, everybody's gone to the Rapture. A lot of people probably already know this, but the Rapture, according to some sects of Christianity, is considered the second coming of Christ, and believers will be transported to heaven. But Rapture also means expressions of intense pleasure or enthusiasm about something. And I think the second possible meaning reflects the game more than the religious aspect.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
I think so. Simply in that, as we go along, you kind of learn the source of what is causing everything, and it's not a religious means of any sort, really. Even though the game does dabble in that topic with the first character you experience has a pretty moving little story with some heavy kind of religious tones to it. But no, I think in this instance, this is one of those where um, it saves it until a little bit later on, where you find out a lot more about what exactly is happening. And I think there are some kind of lines of dialogue at the very end of the game, which we'll get to, that kind of cement which version of Rapture definition wise we're dealing with here.
Yeah, I think with Rapture, I agree with you, Celeste and Billy, that I think it's the second one. Rapture has a visibility in this one. And in a religion, Rapture is that person is there. Supposedly the idea is that person is there, and if he's a Christian and belief and all of that stuff, that they just gone. They just end up vanishing. Nothing comes and grabs them. Nothing comes and leaves a journal or a mark or something, unless that person wrote it. Other than that, there's a thing that happens. Like a Christian will supposed to hear horns, and when they hear horns, the rapture is happening. And on this one, you're not hearing anything. You're just in this town, and you and your wife, who are scientists, are trying to figure out what's going on and stuff, and you hear this dialogue through these radios. So I like the fact that there's another definition to Rapture, and it's so fitting for this game.
Yeah, because when I first saw this title, I thought, am I about to play like a Bible adventure game? What is going on?
Well, I think it's the title, it's the artwork that you look at it, where it's the wife, I think the male and the female, I think they're holding hands in front of that sun. It gives you an idea of like, oh, okay, this is playing a double meaning, where rapture is they're going up to be raptured by God. But with the second thing, no, these two people are really in love, and this rapture of them is what the symbolism is what this game is about. Is what is defining that title.
Yeah, like to be enraptured.
Yeah.
For example. Yeah. Well, this game is set in 1984 in a village called Yawton. How do they pronounce? Is it Yawton? Yawton?
Oh boy, I think you got it. I think.
I apologize to any British listeners.
So it's in Yawton.
Yawton in Shropshire, England. And the title is what captured my interest initially, kind of like with What Remains of Edith Finch. Those are such compelling titles. I want to know more. What is happening? So this game, I would say it's linear, but it's not linear enough to where you will have your hand held. You can absolutely miss a lot of things in this game.
Oh yeah. Oh, there's no hand holding. In fact, at times I've been more lost in this game than I have any I think walking sim we've played so far. And you mentioned the town, and I think I should say of the games we've played so far, I think if I could be picked up and transported anywhere to live, man, drop me in this town. This is a nice, like, little quaint town, although under different circumstances. I would prefer it to be populated. I just love this environment, and you get to explore it. It's like you said, it's linear in that you have to hit certain beats to progress things along. But it really encourages exploration at the same time. Like you have, and I guess we'll talk about the mechanic as we go along. You have something to follow to bring along the main arc of the story. I guess you could divide it into chapters, like we will probably do, and each chapter is a different character. But you can also explore and run into little optional bits of dialogue. And Ed and I were talking before the beginning how it can be a little frustrating because you can miss things that are kind of major, and will put you out of the loop of things you hear about later on. So I almost I love the fact that it is open to explore, but definitely I wish that wasn't the case, though. I wish it wasn't so dependent on you exploring every single nook and cranny to get every little bit of dialogue. I just hate the fact there's stuff you can miss. And I've played it a few times now, and I'm still apparently missing some things. And I was telling him it's killing me because I don't know what it is, and I don't know if it's going to be something that's really going to change something for me or not. But yeah, it's a unique approach to it. That these games are usually super linear or just super wide open, but this is a nice little combination of the two.
Yeah, it's getting that. Some people call it side story, but no, it's really character development and finding out what is going on with the people in this town when you go and explore. Sometimes you go in the house and you will see some light there. You go in and you find out, and it's just like, this is what people were doing on the day of Rapture. This is this is what they were talking about, who they're gossiping, who like what's the drama going on. Like you found and you went out and you found these things and learned. And yeah, you're going to have to play this game maybe multiple times to find out what you missed, because there are some story details to get everything. You got to explore the nooks and crannies of this.
Yeah, I agree with you guys that I would live here. If I would like to not be the only person living there, but man, at the end of a long day, just walk on over to that pub.
Yes.
Oh,
you know what? I wouldn't want to be here. There's another game that we're going to be doing in the future that I care to be for.
Ooh, I think I know what it is.
Yes.
And I can't wait to play it because it'll be my first time. But
actually, no, it's not that one. It's the other one.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, I think we've piqued their curiosity enough.
Yes.
So the game starts with one Dr. Catherine, or she goes by Kate Collins, and she's saying she's the only one left. Very ominous. And this beautiful yet melancholic music is playing. The music in this game.
They did this game justice with this music. And and it's more of the music I think for me, definitely it's when it gets to the ending of people's stories, that music hits so hard. And it's like, it's moving, it's telling, like it brings that conclusion to them, but it makes you feel good about it. Like something is happening, but this music is comforting.
Of all the panic and all the fighting and things you might hear, I think when they conclude someone's little arc on here, there's a sense of peace, and kind of a sense of, all right, a sense of moving on. Like you move on to the next chapter, because almost immediately after you get another name that pops up. So I think the music is wonderful, and there are some, it makes for some pretty moving moments on here. They did a great job with that. Unlike many games I've played, there are just times here where you don't push anything on the controller. You just hold it there and you just take it all in several times in this game.
It's so beautiful. The atmosphere, top notch in this game. Well, we assume control of a faceless person through the first person perspective. And in Edith Finch, which we've talked about, you can actually look down and see her feet.
Yes.
You can see her hands. I think you can hear footsteps though. You hear footsteps while you're walking. And you're in this beautiful valley. And I'm someone who I like to turn around and see what's behind me. And there are some gates. And it looks like there's this observatory, but we can't access it. And that makes me mad, because if I can't access something, I'm going to find a way to get there. So I just proceed on. Well, then we hear this static from a radio and these numbers, this constant sequence of numbers. And it sounds like Kate's voice. So you walk up to these different radios throughout the game, and I don't remember what each one says. So I don't think that's necessary for us to read verbatim what each of these radios says. They're strewn about the game. It sounds like Kate, and she's instructing the listener at this first one to find the answers in the light. And there's this computer screen, and you will find throughout this game all of the computer screens and the televisions too, I believe. They all show the observatory, which is called the Vallis Observatory. And phones are ringing. And if you pick up phones, you can hear people's conversations that they had before they disappeared. There's an abandoned band with a door ajar. That's very unsettling. So were you guys, this is very early on, but were you kind of freaked out at this point? Were you hopeful? Were you scared?
So I wasn't scared because I know that there is nobody on this world. And it was just like walking around and seeing when stuff starts getting revealed in the beginning, you're just like, okay, they must be memories or they must be something to showcase what's going on. So I'm not really scared. I want to know what happened to make this world be empty. So I really wasn't scared. It's separate. It's different than Soma. How Soma has authenticity to it. Even though it has these walking parts, there's something that could really do something to you. And everybody's going to the Rapture, nothing can't hurt you because nothing is there to hurt you.
Yeah, there's no death. There's no chance for you to get a game over on here. There's nothing that's going to send you starting over. I thought it was very ominous opening because you hear the numbers going off, you hear the beeping, and it's reminiscent of like number stations, things you'd hear about like that are and you think, well, what has wiped everything out here? Because you don't have a clue. Was this some kind of war? And this is like a warning, like a broadcast warning. What's happened here exactly? So I thought it was a great way to kind of instantly get you hooked in there at the beginning.
It's one of the odd things still. Who is running the electricity on this world?
Yes. It's going strong. It's going everything's up and running.
Because it's just like
go
ahead.
Well, I'm under the impression that this game is taking place immediately after, because you still find like lit cigarettes here and there. You find little things like that. I'm under the impression that this is just very, very fresh after, I guess, everyone or maybe the last person has gone or everyone has gone. Because yes, otherwise there's a lot to answer. Because that's a lot of unpaid electric bills right there. Those would have got cut off real quick. But I think there are just little things here and there suggest that if not everybody, at least at the time this game starts, there were at least a few people that just vanished.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing up the cigarettes too, because you do see some smoke coming off of the cigarettes, and that's the devil is in the details. Everything you have to pay attention to everything. But I think Ed mentioned this, but you see this orb of light eventually, and you tilt your controller. That is my one gripe with this game. The tilting of the controller is not consistent. Sometimes I would tilt it to the right, but that so it vibrates. The PS4 controller vibrates, and as it gets stronger, the light will expand, and that's when you see stories. But it can be difficult because you're moving it all over.
Yeah.
Did y'all have that problem too, or is it just me?
No, I had that problem because I was just like, okay, I'm turning it, it's not doing it. I'm like, I'm at the right angle. Come on, and sometimes it just would not do it. And yeah, I was just like, this is bad gameplay. Right.
It is. It's and I mean, there's not a lot of controls to this game. It's just walking very slowly. We'll talk about that. I think when we first talked about this, I said this would be the slowest walking simulator we ever play.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about it. Ed and I were talking about it a little bit before. I think some of it's a little intentional just for the style of play. But yeah, the tilting thing is not consistent. There's many times that I was just, what do you want from me? What do you want me to do? I've given you a tilt this way. I've given you one this way. Yeah, that's definitely one of the little things that could have been an interesting mechanic. But I really think it could have done without it altogether, because obviously it wasn't implemented well. And that's, yeah.
Just let me press a button and hold it down, and that reveals everything.
Or press a button, or even just, one of the analog sticks or something like that. But no, the tilting and the controller, it's not an accurate enough thing.
No, and I didn't find it added anything to the story.
No.
It's a mechanic just to progress the story. But when you successfully cause the light to expand and it feels like it explodes, it's suddenly nighttime and there are stars in the sky, and you see these traces of light, these rays of light forming these figures, and they're talking, and they're enveloped in sparkles. It's mystical. It's beautiful.
Yes.
And the first set of people are Kate and her husband, and Stephen there is arguing with a man named Graham. I'm not sure I pronounce his name, about trying to leave. It sounds like Stephen is very urgent. He wants people to leave this area. And it sounds like Graham is resistant.
Yes.
I believe.
Yes.
The character of Stephen throughout is essentially in a panic for the entirety of this story. And I think it shows too. One of the neat little things I noticed is when you get into the chapters with everybody's names, you follow those orbs around, and they lead you to the main bits of story surrounding those characters. And I kind of noticed how the orbs behaved, and it's kind of different for each character. And you'll see when you get to Stephen's chapter, that orb is probably the most frantic and jumping around of all of them. He's a character that, from the time we first hear from him or hear of him, he has a better idea than everyone else. Him and Kate, we'll find out, were there when all this kind of kicked off, and probably both shoulder the blame for it. If you want to say blame, and that'll be a discussion for later too. He's that classic scientist, like in the movies, that knows what's going on. And maybe if he wasn't such a spaz trying to tell everybody about it, they'd listen to him a little more serious. But he's getting in fights, he's getting in shouting matches, and he's trying to get his point across. And he's just coming off crazy throughout the game.
It's kind of what's going on in today, where you're trying to explain to people, look, you need to do this and do that. No, you're taking away my freedom and all.
Yes.
It is so weird to just make that connection, but it's happening. And
there's a quarantine in place in this game too.
What better time to play this game, you guys?
That's right.
Exactly.
That's right. And that town, and they don't fare too well either, because unfortunately most of their population are idiots also, just like here.
It's until it starts affecting them, then they get scared.
Yes.
But yeah, great comparisons, both of you, because this is where we kind of, it's a little eerie how similar some of the symptoms, not all the symptoms, are to what's going on today. So we walk a little bit and we follow the orb, and like Billy said, we see the names of people, and that indicates that person's chapter. And throughout the game, you'll see interactions pop up that aren't as dramatic as tilting your controller. You just walk up to it, and we learn about a Mr. Dr. Wade and Barbara, and they're discussing quarantine, and there are soldiers, and Dr. Wade talks about these sudden headaches he's having. It's a little scary. Then we've learned that Stephen wants to order a strike of the valley, and he keeps saying, we put it in the phones, because again, you'll hear these phones ringing at people's houses and in phone booths, and I highly recommend you pick them up. You will gain great insight. And a strike on the valley, that means he wants to bomb the valley.
Yeah, at this point, one of the first things we learn, it's early, is that he wants to drop a nerve gas on the valley because at this point, what's going on? People are getting headaches, they're getting nosebleeds, and they're vanishing. And he early on is believing it's person to person. So everyone's locked up at home, but he determines that probably the best way to go about it, in a himself included, is to drop this gas on the valley and wipe everybody out, which is pretty extreme. But we'll find out as we go along. There comes a time where even he realizes that is not going to be enough. But that's where we're at early on with Steven, which is pretty. This game it doesn't really ease in. It doesn't. You don't get your feet wet. You hear gloom and doom pretty early on, which I thought added a good sense of tension to it, and it added another layer. Is that why everyone's dead? Was it the gas? And early on, I think the first time I played this, I thought this was going to be a situation where this valley, this entire town maybe got cleared out. Everyone was killed, and maybe based on false information. Maybe, this guy called in this nerve gas strike, and it wasn't that bad after all. I didn't know what kind of twist or turn it might take as we went along. But that was interesting, because that does add a sense of tension to it. And what otherwise is a pretty serene game. You're walking around this beautiful environment and this music and these nature sounds, but something horrible has happened here, and it encourages you to get in there and really find out.
Right, because you really don't see any animals in this game. The weird thing to me was this, like, with everybody who were being raptured or who were going to the next destination, it seems that the orb was taking everything, even their clothes, like everything they had on. So when you walked around the town and you see people who are at their final destination, you don't see like them being out of their clothes. The orb just took everything.
Yes.
Everything physical of them.
Yeah.
And then the orb got smart because they tried to contain it.
Yes.
And it was just like in the phone lines. Like,
yes.
It's in the phones.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It adapted to be like, I still got to do what I need to do. But we didn't know that till like later on in the game and stuff.
The only sign you see of people are just like little things, like the lit cigarette. You'll see, we talked about earlier, one of the things was nosebleeds. You'll see like a couch with bloody tissue on it and things like that. And a whole lot of dead birds, because apparently it is rumored that one of the early ways that it went from person to person was through birds, which was interesting, which it doesn't take. So obviously it is only in the habit of taking human beings, apparently. So yeah, you get a lot of dead birds laying around. And just little signs of humanity as you go along, which I thought was more effective than finding dead bodies or things like that. Just it adds a lot more to the mystery.
Well, Steven said that the orb needed humans to like feed, to and so it would look for anything that's living or mostly human stuff. And just like, I guess the birds were different for some other reason.
But I'm under the impression it also assumed cats and dogs, because there is a part in the game where you see a couple looking for their dog.
Yes.
They're chasing their dog, and we never see the body of the dog, or we see no cats. We see no mice. It's weird, but
it is weird.
We learned some trouble in paradise is happening between Steven and Kate. So I don't know if it's right away you guys picked up on this, but she's apparently black, and Steven is white.
Well, I guess this is Steven's home.
Yes.
And he went over to the States. He met Kate. They got married, and she came back. And And I did want to touch on that she's not very welcomed in that town. And it's said it's because she's American, but I don't know. I don't know if it's just because she's American or if she is in what I'm assuming is a probably an all-white town.
Well, it's you don't recognize the racism in a sense. I think because the thing about it is, it's just like when you hear Kate, and it may be me, she has a British tone to her. Like, yeah, I think yeah, she's for some reason it felt like she still had a British tone. So when I guess with her being around Steven and picking up his accent and everything, when they went to the UK from the US to research this and find out what's going on, I think she picked up on his accent and just was in the town, and that was it. And we'll find out later that it's really kind of something else with Kate than what we expect it to be. So I don't think it's racism in a sense. I think it's literally that other thing that plays a part.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. Well, Barbara Stevens' mother.
Yes.
Yes, I'm
Wendy.
so sorry. Wendy. I'm so sorry.
Yes.
Barbara's just the town busybody. And she makes a comment about lady scientist, what's next? And that's okay. So this town is full of some people who have some very old school views on people's roles based on their gender. And then we're introduced to the titular character, Father Jeremy Wheeler. And he's very kind to Kate. He's very kind to everybody. You can tell this man cares for his flock. Whether you go to his church or not, he cares.
And you find out just how much. He has gone to some extremes here to help out a particular member, which I thought was an interesting plot point. And you hear more about it and kind of how it affects different characters as you go along. And they don't really waste a lot of time getting into that. But I think it's something that kind of is weighing on him when we first interact with him. Like the majority of his time, yes, he is very kind, and with all this going on, the majority of the time you follow him around, it's just him going to check on people. He's going to see if he can help out anybody in any way. He doesn't really seem to have a lot of worry for his own well-being. We do see he does have a little altercation with Steven over the quarantine of people, the way Steven's handling things. But like I said, at the same time, Steven's not presenting his side of the argument that well. But you do find out that one of the things that he did, and it's caused a lot of trouble. We see more with Wendy later on. They are at odds with each other a good deal over a character called Mary. Who was sick. I don't know if they said what Mary was dying from. She had a terminal illness, very unpleasant at that. And she's the wife of Frank, who we find out more about.
Yes.
And one thing you find out about Jeremy pretty early on is that he actually, upon Mary's wishes, was assisted her, giving her a lethal dose of morphine to help her peacefully pass along. And that's something that Wendy, and you have to imagine, this is a drastic step for a pastor to take, to intervene with an assisted suicide. And
you got to think about it. This is 1984.
84 at that, yeah. So that's a big. That's a big taboo then. It still is now, but it's even more unacceptable then. And it doesn't help that the husband Frank is very cold towards him in regards to it in the early goings, and that Wendy is, it says that he's going to be judged for it. But still, it's just an admirable character in that even with all of that on his plate, even though whatever he's going through, he's still just more concerned in this disaster of going around and checking on the people of town.
And I think with Father Jeremy is that yes, he is being this leader, but he's also having his doubts. He's also,
Yes.
and I have
Yes.
to give it to the voice actor. The voice actor
Oh
for
yeah.
this character
Yeah.
made him so believable, made
Mhm.
him feel for, like, made the player feel for him, because it's just like he's going around, yes, he's arguing, yes, he's trying to fix things and make things better. You know, when he gets to his resolution and stuff, and he's crying and he's
Yeah.
talking, and like you get the idea, okay, this is the religious part to it, and they did it justice, because
Yeah.
when you think of the rapture, if you're thinking that, like I said earlier, if you're thinking of the Christian thing, you probably are thinking of that, like that being the
Yeah.
example, but it's more, but it's more than that. And it's just like, out of everybody in this whole story, Father Jeremy was kind of the band-aid of holding everybody together in
Oh
that
yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And once that band-aid was gone, all the wounds came out.
hmm hmm
Yes, and he he actually tries to encourage Kate to attend church, whether she believes or not, so that she
hmm
can be viewed as a member of the community. And
Yes.
she's not someone who's going to do something she doesn't believe in or
hmm
agree with.
Hmm.
He's just trying to help her out. He does
hmm
care. He's a caring person. And I don't know if we established this, but okay, Wendy is Steven's mom, and Barbara
Yes.
is just this town busybody, and Frank is Wendy's brother, so he's
Yes.
Steven's uncle. It's very easy because again, this game is slightly linear in that you how you walk and progress,
Hmm.
but the stories are intentionally scattered all about, and you kind of have to put pieces
Yeah.
together. It's really easy to get things mixed up and be confused.
It is. It's not like a game like Edith Finch where each story was very contained,
Hmm.
focused on one character. This one is everybody is intertwined. And you might not find out everything about Frank if you don't listen to this thing with Jeremy, or if you don't listen to this conversation he has with Wendy, you're going to miss out on this. It's so intertwined. There's not a lot of room for missing things on
it's
here.
it's a drama. It's a
Yes.
walking drama, and because it's just like, if you was able to get the script and give it to different people and just read it without playing the game,
Yes.
you would feel stuff for these characters. You
Yeah.
would see that the voice acting brings them out and everything.
Mhm.
So that's why it's important to like explore and see what this game has to offer, because there's so much stuff to these characters that you will miss out if you don't do it, and you will not understand why this person's personality and characteristics is the way that they are. Because I was telling Billy, if I had to say who the antagonist of this game was, it's Wendy. Wendy was the antagonist of this game, and you really just, she didn't gel with me at all. I will get to the end about her, but I really wish something that didn't happen. I really wanted something else to happen for her story.
Mhm. And I highly recommend that you read every sign. There's just so many pieces of information. They're not, they just they enhance the story so much. Like there are these posters saying, say no to the Vallis Observatory extension. Some of these people are very anti-science, very anti-progress. And there are these butterfly infinity symbols everywhere. And they're on, some people's cars have that symbol on the grill in the front, and some people they have it on their buildings. It looks like painting. It almost looks like a mask that you have around your eyes. And I was really curious about butterflies and their symbols, and I think they represent hope and renewal. That's what I associate with butterflies. And that pattern, it was so cool. I was like, is there a gang taking over this small town? And there's an incident where Steven is in front of a store arguing with someone, and he drops some paint. I think what is he using the paint? It's this white paint. Is he trying to quarantine people? I forgot what the paint was for.
I think so. That's and that's also when he gets into a physical altercation, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I think he was. I believe that's what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he the paint spills onto the pavement in front of this convenience store, and that butterfly symbol forms, which we're assuming is the light's pattern. That's what Kate calls the light stream. She calls it the pattern. And it's this game. It's almost hard to speak about the order of things because I took all of these notes.
Yeah,
but it's like, do we just generally talk about the people, because you might have experienced something before I did, or maybe we missed something. And again, with Father Jeremy helping Mary, and you can actually go to the doctor's office. Did you guys go to the clinic?
Yes.
And he believes a tumor is in the hypothalamus and is causing hemorrhaging. And we notice that whenever people are bleeding, he sees these light particles in their blood clots. So were you guys under the impression this pattern they're talking about and that's leading us, were you under the impression it was taking over people's bodies?
I don't think it was. I think it was just like leaving some kind of residue inside their bodies and getting them kind of ready to take them for some reason. Because I don't think, besides the headaches and some of the blood thing, there wasn't no like really serious things. Like you didn't see no one have a heart attack or convulse or anything and just like pass out. They just swiftly like disappeared. So I don't think it was like, I think it's just like it passed through them, and it started working this magic slowly but surely.
Yeah. I didn't think that it was something along that. I just thought that it was something that that takes root inside of people, and I don't know. I guess it's one of the several things in there that's kind of left to interpretation of the. I guess up to the very end and maybe even afterwards is not only kind of the motivation, but like the methods from which this pattern is doing what it's doing. I think the game gives you a lot, but at the same time, it does leave some things, kind of open-ended.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does a really good job of that, and I like that we all have kind of different ideas of what's going on. And during this chapter, this is crucial. We learn that a Miss Lizzie Graves, who is married to the local mechanic Robert Graves, is having an affair with Stephen.
Boy, it's a regular soap opera in this little town.
Like I said, a drama.
But well, I mean, yeah, it's Lizzie apparently and Stephen were a thing years prior. And then Stephen went on to the States and married Kate, and Lizzie kind of settled down, and it seems like it's kind of echoes you hear of people that don't really leave their hometown. They just they settle down, they have kids, she doesn't seem happy. The husband definitely does not seem to be the friendliest fella. Yeah, but Lizzie, for all of that, is actually one of the people that is very polite to Kate. To her face. I mean, she's having an affair behind her back, so how nice is she? But yeah, she is, and you find out pretty interesting things as you go along. When you were playing as Lizzie, and with the ball of light there is another little one that circles around with hers. And you find out, you get hints, but then it is brought out that during the affair, she is pregnant with Stephen's child. The soap opera deepens. And I thought that was interesting. And it adds, that character gets, I think that is probably one of the more interesting characters throughout the game. And she has a pretty grisly demise, I think. I mean, obviously, when you boot this game up, everybody's gone. But I thought hers was especially sad because she was supposed to meet Stephen and escape the town. But I think this is before, and eventually Stephen reaches a point where he learns that it's kind of hopeless, that there is no escaping from it. So she is kind of just at that. They're going to meet at the train station and then go from there. And she's just kind of left there on her own, left there by her lonesome. And I thought she got a really sad conclusion to hers, I thought.
Well, I think the thing with Lisa is that I think they never moved on from each other.
Oh yeah.
And if of course Kay, if I was Kay, of course I would be pissed off because it's just like we are married. We have a relationship. You know, first of all, you never gave me kids, or we never discussed kids, and you now took the opportunity to sleep with this woman and get her pregnant and stuff. And I think it's, definitely with Liz, it's the unhappiness with the husband. The husband might have been abusive, controlling, or whatever, but they fell out of the love a long time ago. They're just sticking with each other because they probably don't want to be lonely. So, we're just sticking there. Seeing that they were going to run away, it wouldn't solve anything.
Yeah.
Like Stephen would, like, oh yes, you slept with Lisa. I understand that. That's fine. That happens. Sometimes you can't control what happens to the body, and when you're in the mood and you feeling romantic and stuff like that, and your emotions are just everywhere, stuff like that happens. But I'm like, Stephen had to think that, hey, I am married. And I need to tell my wife, like, what you gonna do with that? Like, y'all gonna take the train and leave and go where? It doesn't solve anything because it's gonna be like, you abandoned me for what reason? Just to be with her, to be happy? No, you're still with me. First of all, you hid the stuff from me, and I still found out, no matter what. So it's just like, it's kind of weird, to see how Lisa's ending happened. It was very sad, but like to actually hear later on that to hear that, it was just like, you really was going to do this with them and think that something was going to happen? I'm like, he came over here for scientific research. He didn't come here for a relationship. That just happened to fall in your lap.
Well, the next chapter is the instigator of that relationship.
Yeah.
Wendy, his mother.
Yeah.
She, and I think this is why you were so disgusted with her, Ed. She liked Lizzie and Stephen together, and throughout her chapter, you see her talking with Lizzie. Just, Stephen's back in town. Y'all should have a little friendly drink. And she says, we're both married. It's not appropriate. It's not like we were just friends before. We actually had a relationship. It's a little different. But we do see Stephen and Lizzie at a bar one night, and it looks like they're having a friendly conversation, but we of course learned that it got a little friendlier than just the bar.
Oh yeah. And Wendy comes across a very kind of cold character. You don't see her having a lot of very positive interactions with anyone. I think most of her interactions with people are usually kind of more confrontational. And I was talking about with Ed, I think the only time they try to give her anything remotely redeeming, she walks into an office and there's a veteran that works there, and he's in the middle of having like a PTSD episode, and he's kind of hunkered down, under his desk, and she kind of helps him back and kind of helps him work through it. But she still does that in a pretty forceful, sort of manner. She's I don't think very capable of being that compassionate, kind of towards anyone else, but Stephen throughout it. But yeah, and you really don't know a lot about her. I would like for a character like that to know a lot more about her background. Like, how does she get to be this kind of this cold and this, kind of disconnected from everything, and kind of on this one-track mind of, my son needs to be with this person, and even though he seems happy with this woman, she won't do, and it has to be this one.
I think it was an expectation, because I think to me, in my opinion, I think Wendy wanted Lisa to give her a grandchild. And I think I think she just like if they got together and they
Mm-hmm.
made a family, I myself could, have that feeling of raising a kid again. There was
Mm-hmm.
some there because I don't know because we don't really hear about. I don't think her husband was with her. You
He
No.
know,
died. He died in
Yeah.
World War. No,
so
he returned after World War II, but he's passed away since.
Yes.
okay, and so that grandchild would have filled the void.
Mm.
Wendy has dealt with so much and being lonely so much. She didn't go out and find herself another man.
Yeah.
She didn't be like, I need me my own boo.
Yeah.
She was just like, I've been lonely. I've been doing this,
Yeah.
and what my son is leaving to go be with some other women. So now this form
Mm-hmm.
of loneliness is, hitting me. At least she felt like Wendy probably felt like if Steven would have got with Lisa and they got married and had a kid,
Mm.
that would have fixed her loneliness, and it
Yeah.
did. So
Yeah.
that cause made her bitter and made
Mm-hmm.
her act the way that she did. Now that Stephen came back in town and doing all of these hits, she had sorry about that. She has an expectation of them being back together. So now she has another choice to fix that
Mm-hmm.
loneliness.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really
And that
interesting thought.
it is, and I guess there's more. Obviously, she doesn't seem pleased that Stephen kind of set out on his own life, and left, and she seems very much content with living her entire life in this small town. And it goes with what Ed's saying. It kind of seems like that's what she wants also for him. And Lizzie she's also there. Here's this woman from America that's coming in, an outsider coming to their town. She seems like someone that doesn't want a lot of change. She
Yeah.
wants everything to stay. She wants to see the same faces when she goes out there. And I think a lot of it is just loneliness after the husband. The husband came back from the war, but obviously was not in a good way. When he came back, and I don't think was alive much longer. And I think you do kind of see at least a soft side of her when you get her ending, where when the planes are flying overhead, and her husband was a pilot. Planes are flying overhead to actually drop the nerve gas that she kind of perceives that one of them is her husband. Kind of flying back home to see her, which was. It's a semi-touching moment for a character that otherwise, she let down her guard right there at the end, and showed a little bit of heart, and maybe gave a little background and retrospect into maybe how she was. It doesn't excuse her actions by any stretch. She was definitely, I think Ed used the word an antagonist. She was in a lot of ways. She pulled a lot of strings that put a lot of hard times on several characters in this game.
Like I said, she needed to find her a man and
yes,
yes, get that body worked on and stuff, so she could just.
And who knows how this game would have turned out then? Who knows?
I've never heard it put that way.
That's it.
But I feel bad for her because she seems hopeful until the end, and she assumes the government's coming to Yawton to rescue them. That's another thing that she sees with the planes. And you guys noticed she's been gathering the dead birds. And birds tend to symbolize freedom. You can fly, you can go wherever you want. Yes. And her husband was a pilot. I kind of wonder if she has regrets that even though she's scared to venture out, she's scared to move on. And that's, look, I would love to live in that little town, but I'd also love to leave it sometimes too. Yes. She doesn't sound as progressive. She's kind of a little, I assume she and Barbara are about the same age or of the same generation. They're not very fond of the scientific developments that are happening.
Yeah.
I think she's afraid. In fact, I don't know if it's Wendy or Barbara, but one of them starts saying how all of this exploration is unnatural. We just have to trust what the creator wants. We don't need to go sticking our noses and exploring, because I don't know if we stated it, but Stephen and Kate are, I think they're astrophysicists. Astronomers, and they spend a lot of time in this observatory. They study the stars, they study the planets, they get really in depth to it, and it freaks a lot of the people out. It kind of reminds me of Belle in Beauty and the Beast, how her nose is always in a book, and that freaks out a lot of the town people.
But it can be there can be a little bit of honesty in they're poking around with these scientific things, causing something, because that is essentially what it occurs. It's through their looking further and further into, they find like a pattern in the stars, and they amplify it, and that gives it the open door to come on in. So in a way, there's a little bit of validity behind it.
Well, it's mostly like Stephen and Kate are the educated people. Everybody else is in a town person are common folk. They're not highly educated, but they know the streets. They know they recognize some things because they've been in the town so much. And Stephen and Kate haven't really. We don't know when Stephen left America, left the UK to be in America. But who's these educated people coming to our town trying to tell us common folk what we know about what's going on?
And haven't we seen a little bit of that lately?
Right. And so it's the town is just like, I think they're fearful because, like you said, Billy, the honesty and stuff, but they won't grasp what Kate and Stephen are trying to do in everything because they're not on that level of being educated. They need stuff to be dumbed down to them. And if it could be dumbed down to it and they could somewhat agree, then they'll understand them. But they're mostly, a lot of them feel like, no, you guys are wrong. I've been in this town, so I know what's going on. And so I'm right. You guys just are just making guesses and stuff. You guys don't know anything. So it's that kind of, it's not, I want to say it's kind of that war, but it's kind of that battle against each other.
Yeah.
Can I get personal for a second?
Sure.
When I taught English in Japan for 6 months, and when I returned, I learned pretty quickly there are a few people in the world who are not interested in hearing anything about another country. And there are some people who still have the World War II mindset when they refer to people in other countries, and it's very disheartening.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. For as far as we think we've come along. This was 1984, but in the game, but there's still the same types of people with the same types of kind of limited mindsets and all that today. And I think this game's just kind of a cross section of people that are just simple folks that just want things to go one way. They don't care what's happening outside. They kind of are probably more afraid, and it comes out as a lashing out and kind of an anger towards anything that goes against just kind of what they know in their day-to-day routine.
Yeah, they're threatened. They feel threatened. I think it's called cognitive dissonance, where you are being challenged, and a lot of people don't like that. It's really sad, and there are some little parts throughout Wendy's story that we learned. Okay, this is really sad. We pass this creek and we see this truck in the water, and there's this tree branch through it. That was Robert Graves in that truck. We don't see his body in there. And there's a couple, they're named Diana and Sean. And they're responsible for getting into an accident. And they're in a hurry to leave the village. And they kind of dismiss, they almost don't really value Robert at all. He sounds like he's the town drunk that nobody can stand. So they're in a rush to get out of the village. And they're also like, oh, well, he'll be fine, or he's dead already. What's the point of checking on him? And that's
but those characters, you don't get a lot of Sean and Di, but you don't get a lot of good from them when you do. They have prior to this escape attempt pretty much have pawned their baby off on there's a character, Rachel. I took it as a younger lady that works with Lizzie. And there's a whole thing with her having a relationship with a fella named Reese, and her father disapproving of it, and more of this small town soap opera continuing on. And she's left in charge of this baby, and you get the impression that the characters of Sean and Di kind of didn't not too attached to it.
They didn't want it.
To begin with, they give it to her, and the character Rachel I thought was one that doesn't get a lot of time, but certainly she definitely had a real touching, a really touching little bit there, as she's kind of at the end when all this panic's going on. She's kind of Lizzie runs this kind of children's center. And Rachel's the one that's kind of left with this baby now. And, she's kind of left to keep the kids, keep their minds occupied. And they're doing that by rehearsing. They were going to do a play of Peter Pan, and she's got them rehearsing that. And she's, just singing to this baby as everybody there. I think the gas got hold of them there.
Yeah, it did.
But no, I thought it was her story was one of, she probably not being one of the main, named characters that gets a chapter. Her story probably got the most to it. Other characters get name dropped and we get a little bit. I like that little aside they spent on her. It wasn't a lot, but I thought it was interesting how they did that. They stretched it out without having you do more chapters as you went through the game.
Yeah,
and completely optional. You could have missed all of that.
I think Rachel is kind of like, she is a child, but she has more adult responsibilities. Where the other two, the parents, they're acting childish and selfish in a sense. So the roles kind of reverse in that. And I think this is the emotional part of this whole game.
Yeah.
It's just like seeing that she's singing and trying to keep the kids, and she's trying to still be hopeful and stuff, knowing that the ending is there, and to see what happens and see them get taken away and everything. It's just like, out of everybody in this whole town, this is the story beat that hits you. Yeah, that you get it. That you put the go ahead.
And I think it goes to show you that there are, you meet a lot of people in this town that you don't have a lot of good to say about. I think this serves to show that there are good people. Because if this was happening to a town full of people you didn't like, the story is not going to have that much, impact to it. But to show that there are good people, and I think it shows, and I think we see this all the time, that the adults in this town, the older people in this town, they're kind of set in their ways. They're not the nicest folks, but maybe there was kind of hope for, the younger generations coming around, that they were a little kinder and they were a little more caring and a little more open towards everyone. And of course, they're not going to survive to continue on in this particular form on Earth. But I think that helped at least a little bit to kind of humanize the town a little more, because up till that point, I mean, it's affairs and it's, and people fighting and
abandoning their babies,
abandoned babies, and people that don't like outsiders. And there's all this stuff. So it was nice to have something, really positive, and to show that, yes, there are good people in the town too, and it just makes it more of an impact, because then you're thinking, all right, this is happening to these characters I don't care much for, but for all of them, how many genuinely kind people in this town are also being affected.
And I think with the Rapture, when it comes to the relationship of everybody, Rachel is the mother to all the kids in town, and to that little baby. And so to see when we get to the end on why, what the kind of meaning of this game is, that little section fits about this game.
Oh yeah. It plays, and God, you can miss it. I can't believe this game. But there's so much important stuff you can miss. But no, I think that is correct. I think that is a lot of symbolism, and it does have its payoff later on. It just feels like an aside at that point in time, but it does pay off. And who's the next? Is Frank? Frank's the next one we bump into?
Yes, sir. But there is someone that I want. There's an incident I wanted to ask you guys about. And
yeah.
The Howard is the train operator, and if you walk along the train tracks, you see probably the only ghastly thing in this game besides the dead birds and the tissues covered with blood from people's nosebleeds. Some people apparently tried walking in the train tracks, and they were killed by a train. Again, you don't see any bodies, but you see splatters of blood. I think you see some shoes, maybe.
Yeah.
Did they confirm that as Diana and Sean?
I think it was. I can't remember the exact dialogue, but I did put them down in my notes. So there's something in there that heavily alludes to after the crash. They, kind of set out on foot to escape the town. I guess for some reason the train track's the way to go. That was Steven's plan, but I did have assumed that it was them. I've written it down. I don't know the exact dialogue that's dropped. I don't know if it's direct or it's inferred. And I don't know why the train crash occurred either. It could be the conductor just vanished.
Under the train.
Yeah. But no, I was under a very strong impression that it was them that got hit by it's. For characters that probably do the most wrong throughout the game, they get the grisly end. That abandoning the child. Obviously, when the using the driver, even though he's obviously very intoxicated. I think he was driving on the wrong side of the road when the accident occurred.
Yes, they used that as an excuse. He was already on the wrong side of the road.
And just abandoning him. It may be just kind of a little bit of justice throughout the game that they get kind of one of the more grisly sort of ends. But I guess you get taken up no matter what, though. Not just people that are living right there at the time. And that's not. I don't know. That's never really talked about, because you have people that do die by other means. Like, they obviously were killed by this train, but the bodies are gone too. So is this every human? Is this that's something that's not really fully explored. But I do think, though, that it may be based on some things we'll talk about, kind of towards the end. But that was interesting that there is one jarring, like, grisly demise in the game.
Now, I'm going to be a little bit sadistic, but it was well deserved.
Oh
yeah, I think it was well deserved.
It's poetic justice.
Yeah, like I said, it's one of the bits of justice throughout the game, because these were, even Wendy, it can be said, has a heart deep down. It's been kind of corroded over the years from different things, and maybe she even though it's not coming off that way, maybe she is good intentioned, at least towards her son, if no one else. But these were definitely two of the characters that there's nothing positive presented about them at all.
They were, I think they were fearful, they were selfish, and they play a little part in this game in a sense. So when you see their demise, you really don't feel nothing for them, because it's just like, if you wouldn't have ran away and stuck with your child, none of this would have happened. You would still would have got raptured, but you would have got raptured in the right way. And all the three of y'all could be together as a family to understand what is going on, but y'all ran away. So what happens, that things are going on. They keep telling you not to leave this country and stuff, but you still want to be disobedient. So this is your reward for being disobedient. You're still going to get raptured, but we're going to kill you, and we're going to kill you first, and then we'll take you away and leave it like that. And then you die and don't get your baby back. That's the crazy thing.
There's the mic drop for that.
Well,
That's all I could think.
because the thing about you got to think about it, like, is the people who do get raptured, are they going to another plane, or is it people who do get killed, like who take their lives or whatever? Do they go to like the underworld? Like, where do people go? Where's the orb taking them at? We don't get a full definition of where they're taken. We know that they're going to be in the afterlife, but where?
So you brought up something sadistic. I'm going to bring up something morbid.
All right.
So at the church that Jeremy, for which Jeremy is the pastor, there is a graveyard. Are those bodies there?
It's, and I guess we'll discuss it more at the end, when it's kind of revealed what this pattern is doing to people, and I guess what it's doing for them. It seems like that people are being reunited with people that have passed before the game began. Before the events that we're seeing. Wendy and her husband, for example. I think it's implied that they are together towards the end. So it is hard to say what exactly. It's one of those things that is kind of left there. I think the game, it strikes that balance where I can't say it didn't tell me enough, but I do wish it would have given me a little bit more in terms of details for that. Because it's not something that's going to get a sequel. This was it, one and done. There's nobody else out there.
Right.
There's nobody out there to follow now. But I think no. Go ahead.
Oh, I think the orb didn't take any of those people who are already dead. I think passing through the body and everything, they were just like, well, there's nothing here. So they probably just like, people have died, and we don't know how long they've been dead. But those bodies could have decomposed for a long time ago. So I think it's just like you literally have to be somewhat alive and physically there for the orb to take you. So
y'all are both bringing up really good points, but I'm kind of curious with Frank's story and again with Wendy's if.
With Frank, his story was a lot of he is another guy that seems all right. He is obviously still his wife was the one that that Jeremy, the pastor from the beginning, helped to pass along. And Frank is someone that's dealing.
I thought that was Mark. I thought that was Mark. Was it Mark?
Frank is the husband of Mary, who was the one that was. Am I correct? I think.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
He's the one. Well, we're gonna get into it.
Yes. But Frank is he's someone dealing with something on two fronts. There's grief over his wife passing, and there's a tremendous guilt inside of him also, because his wife, when she was passing, wanted him to be there, wanted him to be there for her, and it was too much for him. It was too overwhelming. So he went down and he had himself a little drink instead, got a little drunk instead. And Father Jeremy kind of stepped in from there. And there's a pretty strong scene where he actually, forgives Jeremy for what he did, and not only forgives him, but kind of expresses a jealousy and said, I should have been, I wish I could have been the one that was kind of or not a jealousy as much as an envy. I wish I could have been, as strong as you to be there for her and things like that. So he's an interesting character in that I think he is probably, as of the time this game begins, dealing with a lot of emotions where Stephen is just in a panic and Father Jeremy is kind of a calm presence, going from person to person to help out. Frank is just sad, and you even find his orb just crawls along a little slower than the rest, because he's lost at this point in time. Not only that he's lost the person he loves, but he just feels like he has let her down and let himself down. But he is also the one that when he finds out Steven's plan, I guess is a big ham radio enthusiast.
Yes.
And he, which is an infinitely interesting hobby. But that's an aside. And when he hears Steven's plan that they are going to go through with the strike, he is the one that goes and sounds the alarm to warn the town that something is incoming. So he so he can't quite get on board, with those plans.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I don't know who wants to go first, you or me, Ed.
I'll go first. I didn't care about Frank. I didn't care about his story.
God.
I didn't care about his guilt. I really don't.
You're tough.
You're
tough.
I did not care anything about him. It was just like you were weak. You were scared, and I understand that you were. I understand you were written that way, but I know it was hard to face your love losing. But you promised that you was gonna be there, and you didn't stick to that promise. And now you're trying to make it up by giving yourself to what's going on so you could be with her. And it's just like, no, it's too late for that. Your redemption is forced to you. You're trying to have some kind of redemption because of this. And I'm just like, no, you should have been there. There was no way that you cannot face anybody. You already made a vow to her through sickness or death that you would be to her. This is in your marriage vows, hopefully that he wrote, and you pussyfoot out of this.
Yeah, that is, and that is a thing, because it is something that, as there, it's not something that, I mean, there's nothing he can do to redeem, what's occurred. And it's not a character where when you're watching him, you're like, oh, things are going to turn around for him, because there's no way. Kind of the things he's done, there's no fixing. It's just his was the journey with him was not him trying to correct things, because what are you going to correct at that point? It was just kind of the realization he was having as he went along and trying to whip up some sort of strength.
But this woe is me mentality is not working. You know that someone at that pub is telling you, because you guys live in a community where probably everybody know everybody's business. Yeah. So there should have been someone at the bar should have been like, I'm not serving you a drink. You go be with your wife. Oh, she's on her dying bed. Someone would have knew something is up. And they would have, and someone was there keeping you there to make money off of your woes because you didn't want to face you didn't want to face reality. No, no. You promised your wife. You could have avoided this. You could have actually dealt with. I would understand you dealing with grief if you was there to see your wife pass away, and then come to the realization that I've been grieving, but now I know that I made that promise to you that I would see you once again. So when he was taken away and everything, that ending for him would have felt more would have felt better and stuff. And it's just like, no, it's too long that you ran. To me personally, it's just like you ran away for too long and you had this woe me mentality, and now you're trying to get brownie points because now you want to come to a realization that what you did, and now this is gonna make it up. No, it don't work that way. So Frank's story, he could go somewhere, kick rocks.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate with that. Like we said, it takes place in 1984, and Frank is probably in his 50s or 60s. So again, we've talked about this before, like with It Gone Home. For a man at that time, I'm assuming, just based on cultural context, feelings were not something you learned how to handle in a healthy way.
Yes.
And when his greatest opponent was whatever was killing his wife, and it was out of his control. There was nothing he could do to fix this, to save his wife. So I do wish she had not had that cowardice, but at the same
Yeah.
time, I can understand how I don't know how to handle this. I'm terrified, but I also don't want to appear weak in front of my wife and Father Jeremy. So he also, his whole for another thing, this setting for his farm, oh my goodness. That is, the way you just walk onto these sprawling fields of wheat or corn, wheat, I think. And it is just absolutely beautiful. And we also learned his cows are dead. Is the pattern killing the cows, but leaving their carcasses?
I guess so.
I don't know if when we get down to it, we're talking about like the presence of a soul or something like that. I don't know what we're dealing with, but yeah, it does seem that it is killing other animals, but leaving them behind. Whereas with people, it is taking the entirety. I don't know what it is there. I don't know if maybe humans are the only ones that can kind of process what's going on if other animals aren't able to. I don't know if that's just due to make the genetic makeup or anything like that. That's another one of the kind of the mysteries of the game. Why the dead animals, but people are still up and running, are still taking hold. I don't know. It's another one of those that hell, maybe there's some dialogue in another little corner of a room that I haven't encountered that fully explains it. But as of now, I have no good answers for that. But I do assume that the pattern's involved for all the death in the area.
Yeah.
It's he tries to counsel Reese as well, and he warns him, because we learned that Reese is probably in his early 20s while Rachel is about 15, 16 years old. So he's there's a funny moment where he's talking with Reese while they're working on this tractor, and I think he says her dad'll bust your teeth in if he finds out you're sniffing around his farm. And we do learn something from one of Kate's, I think it's the radio or the phone. She thinks everything happening is not an attack. I think this is really important, but rather a byproduct, kind of like collateral damage of whatever the pattern is doing in an attempt to communicate. She believes that this is something, again, this game goes all over the place. We're trying to keep up with these people's stories, but we're also kind of following Kate's scientific discovery at the same time. It's really interesting. And she does not believe the pattern is evil. She does not believe it has malevolent intentions. And I don't know. What do y'all think about that?
I think that and actually Stephen during his story at the very end has a pretty solid analogy as to when he's telling the story of the fox when he was a child. And I think essentially he's talking that his father tried to rehabilitate a fox they found that was injured, and Stephen as a child tried to feed it, and it bit him, so his father had to put it down, and his father kind of explained to him that yes, it hurt him, but it didn't really know what it was doing. It was a wild animal that was kind of going off instinct. And I think that applies like 100% to this pattern. And we can talk about it more at the very end. But I very quickly kind of was under the impression that it wasn't like an alien takeover or something like that. It wasn't like an Independence Day aliens coming down to wipe out humans and take over the earth. But that it was more of kind of something down here, maybe trying to help or maybe trying to do what it thought was best for everyone, but just not knowing that the damage it was doing in the process, not having not being human or anything like that, not having any idea of, the kind of the human condition and the feelings and, and whatever pain it would inflict along the way. It's kind of what I, about midway through the game, started to kind of think.
I think the particle is just, it was just a thing, and it was just doing what it does best. Like, it don't have no agenda. It really don't have no mind. It's just, it may go off like, I feel something close. Let me, go do it. And, I think it's just like something that was in emotion that that it can't change or anything. So that's what I thought about the pattern.
Y'all are making me think something I hadn't thought of before. It almost is like the WoW in Soma. A little, maybe not. I don't know the pattern, because Kate mentions how she gets a profound sense of loneliness with the pattern. And I'm wondering, it just reminds me of the WoW. If nobody's listened to that episode, go listen to it. We talk about it, but I wonder if I'm just doing what I do best. I'm trying to help people, kind of like that. I think it's of Mice and Men, when that guy spoiler alert, I think he accidentally kills a puppy.
Yeah.
While hugging it too hard.
That's an old spoiler, though. If you hadn't caught that one yet, you deserve to have that one spoiled for you. I don't know. I am under the impression that this is something, a sentient thing, and I think they found it just kind of out there in space, and it's something that was maybe leading a very lonely existence, and which one would explain kind of why Kate sort of latches onto it, because she's someone herself that just kind of feels like an outsider and kind of feels alone. Her husband obviously is not there at this point. He's off getting drinks around town. But I think it's something that came down, and like a being that who knows for how long has just kind of been out there lonely until someone finally, noticed it and, amplified a signal and gave it a way to venture down. And it's something that knowing what loneliness is, you're finding that it's pairing people together. Wendy and her husband is kind of the last thing she sees, and it's sort of implied that they are now on some other plane together, or Frank and his wife are now together. It's almost like something that knows what it's like to be lonely, so it's kind of preventing these people from ever really having to experience that again by giving them a means to another plane to kind of go on forever with whoever they are. I don't know if it's a soulmate thing or something along those lines of whoever the person they love is, and that's also the confusing thing, where we're seeing people that were dead before the event, like Wendy's husband, Frank's wife, that they are now, I believe, Kate kind of goes with a roll call of who's together now. And yeah, so these are people that were gone before. So I don't know. I don't know if it's just the individual's perception, like this person is living in their own world with maybe this is not the actual legitimate soul of that person, but it's just it's real enough to it's fine. But I don't know. I just saw it as a being that kind of only knew loneliness and was maybe longing to be found out there, and as soon as it was trying to prevent that for other people. Although the means it goes about it, perhaps could be brought into question.
Well, I think the means is that, to me, is like the particle, the orb, I call it the orb, is when it goes through these people, it's collecting their memories. It's collecting their experiences. Because when you're playing the game, that's the way that the story is told. It's through everybody's memories. So if the orb didn't go through any of these people, and they somehow vanish and stuff, we want to know what the memories were. We want to grab what the story is. We would have been walking through an empty town till we got to the ending to be like, why are we just walking through an empty town? That's not.
Yeah.
What kind of game is this? So I think the particle is just like it experienced it while it raptured everybody. It probably found out all the stuff, that events that led up to that day, but it also seen years of them growing up, having these relationships with different people, and seeing at a point in time that this was when people were happy when they were together. So to bring that happiness back, I'm going to take them and then take them somewhere and make them be happy again and remind them why they're happy.
Yeah, I think even Kate says that everyone's reunited, happy forever. But I don't know. There is one small incident throughout the game where I think it takes a slightly what could be conceived malevolent tone to it, and that's with Stephen. We finally get a chapter for Stephen, and it is probably the most hectic because this is the guy running around the whole time, and does Stephen kill a guy at the heart? Does he kill a guy with a hammer?
Yes, Sam.
Yes, yes. I thought for sure he did. Because Stephen is stealing. I think is he stealing the paint? Or supplies, yeah.
So this is after Frank's chapter. Depending on which way you go, you will go to either Lizzie's story or Stephen's story. It is possible that you don't go through Lizzie's story because Stephen's is the second to last one.
Yeah, and you miss Lizzie, you miss a lot, and that's the one where we talk about. You miss Rachel's story. You miss a lot with Lizzie. You probably wouldn't even know Lizzie is pregnant at that point in time if you missed her. Station. Yeah.
Let's see. I just you actually see Lizzie and Kate have a little talk.
Yes.
A little interaction.
Yeah.
And I didn't mean to interrupt about the killing.
No, you're fine.
No.
I didn't want us to miss Lizzie's part because it's barely possible.
Yeah.
So Kate knows that her husband is two-timing her.
Yes.
And she makes a comment. She seems a little ambivalent about it. It doesn't really seem to faze her.
Yeah.
She makes a comment that it's not that he's cheating on me that hurts me. It's that he thinks I was too stupid to figure it out.
Yeah.
Her intelligence and her studies are her priority.
Yeah.
And she's more insulted by that he was trying to hide something from her and thought he was clever enough to keep it hidden than she is that he is sleeping around with someone. Yeah. And we have some little snippets where we learn that some elderly people have been intermittently disappearing. So there's no real rhyme or reason to that. And Lizzie actually tries to be friendly with Kate, who's not quite as polite. And here's the old song and dance about the other woman. Stephen is reluctant to break up / divorce Kate. Lizzie is sensitive about something. And she thinks that he won't leave Kate for this reason. Do you guys remember what it is? She's very self-conscious about something.
Ooh.
She was in an accident and she's kind of crippled.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. It's we don't see her, so it's not as glaringly obvious. It's just it's just talked about. I guess she got in a car accident or something, but I think she still has her legs. She just can't get around quite as well. And she brings that up to Stephen. She's like, well, is there something wrong with me? It's because I'm not, my body's not perfect anymore. And and then that's when we learn about Rachel and little baby Dylan and the children at the main hall of that camp, which Lizzie is the manager of this beautiful, relaxing little lake area. Like they call it the beach. That's a neat part. And I thought this was very poignant. Rachel is talking about starlight and how when we must go. That is a beautiful, beautiful scene.
Oh yeah.
And do y'all remember about Reese and Rachel's plan?
Yeah.
They had an idea to elope to France or Spain.
Yes, that's right.
And I think they have those love blinders on. I don't think they're really thinking through.
It's not a very feasible plan.
It's like a Romeo Juliet thing, except for their ending's not quite the same.
Yeah.
But I just summarized Lizzie's whole chapter. Was there anything you guys wanted to add about that camp scene before we move on to Stephen's?
I'll tell you, I mean, the thing that stood out, I talked about it at length earlier, that stood out about Lizzie's was kind of the thing with Rachel. Kind of hijacks that and becomes kind of the highlight of her chapter. You know, like I said before, highlighting some of the good in town and things like that. I thought that, you know, the thing with Lizzie and Stephen, obviously I would like to have known more about why they parted ways to begin with. Like I would like, you know, kind of more background into that exactly. Unless I missed something, you don't get a lot on that, because it's obvious that, you know, Stephen even says that he regrets leaving in the first place. And so it's obvious that he kept that flame a going even when he took off. Like, did he have a moment where it's like, I can't just live in this small town for good, I've got to go to the States, and she wouldn't go with him? I unless I missed something, I didn't get a lot of background onto why the two of them kind of parted ways.
I think that's something that they could explore, and I think that's why all of that affected Wendy of being upset that he left.
Yeah.
So, and I think my assumption is he parted ways so he could come to America to be a scientist, to learn something. And I think somewhere in his area they just didn't have the tools or the resources to do it. So since he had this time, you know, he went out there. Then when he met Katie, and they were connecting over science and stuff.
Yeah.
He found his love. He kind of found his somewhat soulmate because they connected on so much. And so the mind of Lizzie just fell out or anything. You know, I can understand why Katie is hostile to Lizzie, thinking that she's kind of a hussy and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Because you slept with my man, not. You know, you knew that we were married. You knew that we were in town. You didn't have to make the choice to have a drink and catch up with them. You didn't have to do that. You know, you could have just, when you seen us, could have walked to us, talked to us, and moved on. If my husband was making moves, be woman enough to come up to me and let me know, get your man. But no, Lizzie was unhappy. Stephen probably felt like, you know, we got to talking, that old flame came back, someone turned the gas up, it lit up, and now we're back to doing what we do. And I don't think it was drinks or anything. I think it was the moment that somebody touched somebody in there, and it led to that. Because y'all having a pint or whatever, how long was you drinking to know that I'm drinking with my ex-girlfriend, and I know my wife got to be trying to figure out with me? Now this is 1984. This may sound like I'm using modern knowledge and stuff, but it's just like, you know that you are not with your wife, and you know your plan being there was to do research, not fall in love with somebody.
And I wonder how strong that relationship was anyway with Stephen and Kate, because it seems, you know, I don't know how much of it is love and how much of it is just a shared interest in their work. You know, how much of it is, you know, that I love this person, and how much of it is, you know, being with this person is good for my career, being with this person is good for my work. I like having someone that's on my level, that I can talk about this work with. I don't know how much of the relationship was true love and how much was just kind of a convenience almost. Because it seems like if he would have been deeply in love with Kate, there wouldn't have been all the regret that he talks about with Lizzie. And it seems like that, you know, he's always regretted not being with her. It doesn't seem like he's really gotten her off his mind. So So I do wonder on Steven's end, at least, like how strong his feelings were, sort of to begin with Kate.
I think it was an intellectual connection. I think I think people can experience that where, oh my gosh, we get along so well intellectually, or we have a lot of things in common. But when it gets right down to it, as far as being life partners, that just doesn't work out. So I guess Lizzie seems she seems a little smarter than a lot of the other townspeople. She doesn't seem as closed-minded. She's very friendly to Kate. I don't know if she's doing that because she feels guilty and she's trying to overcompensate, or she's I don't know. But what I did find it very telling, if you guys remember this, and I think this is another thing you can skip. I think Diana and Sean are trying to tell Lizzie that Robert is hurt or is dead. You remember that? I don't know if you guys.
I don't recall that portion.
Yeah.
It's kind of towards the back by these campers.
Okay.
And they're running frantically to her, and she never even lets them say anything. I don't think they even ever say his name. Oh my gosh, like something horrible happened.
Yes.
And we're so sorry. And she's asking them, where's your baby? Let's go get your baby. So I don't know if she already kind of knew that something happened to Robert because he was always drinking, and she figured they were about to tell her some bad news. But I think their relationship is a little on the rocks too.
Yeah, it didn't seem like a happy relationship. Like I said, I think I said early on, it just seemed like their relationship was just kind of that thing you see people do in a small town. There's not a lot to pick from. She probably like, all right, I guess, I could have a family with this fella here and move on. And she was probably, it seems like that she never got Steven off her mind either. So I don't think she could wholeheartedly go into another relationship. So I think for her, it was a matter of, I guess this will do. I think there was a lot of settling on her part. It seems like kind of a life where she had just kind of settled down and maybe given up a lot of like hopes that she may have had, or kind of visions for the future she may have had with Steven. But no, and I picked up that maybe the husband wasn't the nicest fella either.
Yeah, drinking.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah, exactly. Probably was very belligerent, very angry. Probably not home a lot after he worked. Probably gonna close up the shop and I'm gonna go to the pub.
Gonna close up the pub after that. Yes,
right.
By the way, those pubs are really charming.
They are. Oh.
I kind of like, I'm a big fan of Cheers, and it reminds me of just a smaller version of Cheers.
Yeah.
But on to more important things. Now this is what Billy's talking about.
We got a hammer. We got a potential hammer killing to talk about here. I think it's a definite that when you start control of Steven, that orb is just kind of all over the place, and he is. And you find that he got caught stealing by Sam, I believe. And, you get kind of the confrontation, and there's blows being thrown, and you see, kind of the results of that. And it seems for all intents and purposes that he's murdered this poor fella.
He's a killer.
Ooh. Now, okay.
Yeah.
I have some notes. So Sam, this is just to connect everybody. We almost should have made a chart for him to hold up for people.
Yeah.
Because it's really easy to get lost. But so Evelyn and Sam are Rachel's parents. And Sam owns this warehouse. I think, supply. Yeah. So that's just to give some context to who this person is. He's Rachel's father. And so Steven, when we get to his area, it looks like kind of the end of the road for that town. It looks like we've reached the end of Yawton. And we actually get, I thought this was really sweet. One of the houses we see is under repair, and it's the house that Steven and Kate were working on. They had just moved back to town, and I think he did love Kate in some way, because there's a little scene where his mother Wendy is questioning him so much about Kate and saying how it's not going to work and it's so different. And I have to give it to Steven. He sticks up for her and he calls her brilliant while he's discussing her with his mom. So I think he admires and respects Kate.
Yes.
Maybe more as an intellectual than as a partner again.
Yeah. I think with her, I think it's kind of a peer thing more than anything else, which is a love in some form. But I think when you get down to a true love, I think that Lizzie was probably, you know, the one for him all this time, but he was maybe enamored or kind of taken aback by Kate, who is, you know, he considers kind of intellectually maybe superior. He does seem to kind of be in awe of, you know, her work to a great extent.
That's awesome. Did you want to add anything, Ed?
No.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure because I know like sometimes we all get fired up and start going on. There's another part with Kate. I guess I can't remember if it's a phone or radio. She talks about changes from the pattern. She doesn't think it's in the observatory. She thinks it's in her. And she's concerned about caring for the light and thinks it's afraid. Again, she gets this sense of loneliness from it. Like you had said, Billy, where there's this being out there and it's lonely. And printers have been spitting out sheets of zeros. Another weird occurrence. There are all these little weird things. Did you guys think there was any significance to the numbers in the radio?
I was just thinking of data. I was just thinking like it was data numbers or something like it. Like those numbers are actually words that's trying to tell something, but it can't communicate those actual words. So it's doing just numbers and stuff.
Yeah. And then of course this is the part where Lizzie's waiting for Steven at the train station. She hears the planes flying. Guys, those scenes where the planes are going overhead. Those are rough.
Yeah, they actually look terrible. I'm just like, what the world is that? I thought the game was like buggy or something.
Oh,
I was
my
like,
gosh.
what the world? It's like, okay.
Y'all notice the little canisters in the pond at the beginning of the game? They're like some empty gas containers.
Yes.
I thought another cute thing, we actually go to Howard's house and there's a little Easter egg. There's a train set in it and he's the train station.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I thought that was so cute.
I found it. I did some research on the numbers that you get throughout. Apparently, and I think it's one of those things that wasn't like as complex as you know, kind of assumed. But there is apparently it's as simple as equating the number to letter. Like, you know, 1 would be an A, 2 would be a B, and you get this big. I think it's from an actual scientist, maybe. There's a Douglas. Oh boy, this last name is going to get put through the ringer. Hofstadter, I guess. Hofstadter, maybe. And it is, in the wake of a human being's death, what survives is a set of afterglows, some brighter and some dimmer, in the collective brains of those dearest to them. There is, in those who remain, a collective corona that still glows. Is essentially the thing that is being played code-wise kind of throughout, which I guess really is like a gigantic spoiler right there at the beginning. Probably if you sat down and actually, you know, tried to work that through. But I played the thing 3 times and I finally, you know, kind of sat there and listened to it a while this last time. But I finally had to get online and kind of see what's up with this. Yeah, and I can't say I would have had the patience to to do that myself. But no, it's interesting, and I think that kind of, you know, it says a lot about the game, and like how Ed was talking about earlier, how it's kind of collecting these memories, and you're kind of seeing memories not just from immediately before, but you're seeing things that took place, a while back. You're seeing these people interact with kind of the people that, kind of made them the happiest to be with and things like that. So I think there is kind of something to that. I guess that would kind of support it also. And if that is the pattern's communication, it's kind of a calming message, maybe that it's sending along. That it sounds ominous though, which kind of is the thing with the pattern to begin with. It's maybe has good intentions, but it's coming off in kind of a threatening manner, just because it doesn't really know any other method for which to present itself or anything like that. But I don't know.
But that was beautiful. Thank you for that, Billy, by the way.
Well, thank you whoever was patient enough to sit there and translate that letter by letter.
I am not that person.
was not going to be me.
But I think we've kind of alluded to this. While Kate wants to embrace and study this pattern more, Stephen wants to stop it. He thinks it's evil. And okay, so is he stealing from the warehouse to bring supplies to his bunker, or is he stealing for other people? I can't remember.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think he's stealing for the bunker.
For himself? His own bunker?
Yeah.
Jerk. Well, because Sam is upset with him for stealing, but I think there's more to it. I don't think they're big fans of Steven. Do they know? Do they know what he's doing, like with Lizzie? There are some people who are aware in that small town.
I think so. I think they're probably some hard feelings or something in the past that's playing a part, and I think I can't really say for sure. I feel like Sam probably still had a crush on Lizzie, and now to see Stephen come back and them hanging around each other, I think that enraged Sam, and there might have been some jealousy there. Because I'm like, stealing a hammer? I'm like, really, dude? You probably got like 18,000 hammers in that warehouse.
Wait, hold up. Sam and Evelyn are married, and they're Rachel's parents. Sam liked Lizzie?
I think so.
I don't. Was there some dialogue?
It's no dialogue, but it feels like, why are you hostile to Steven? And if we're talking about that, if we're talking about Sam probably hunching that, Lizzie and Steven is together, Sam don't know nothing about Katie, so it has to be that you have to have some attraction or something, or you wish that you had a relationship with Lizzie, but you don't. So you're acting out on Steven or something. So there might have been some form of jealousy. It's a possibility. I can't say for sure.
Oh, thank you for that, because I hadn't thought of that. I thought they just thought he was an arrogant prick who thought he was better than everybody else.
No.
But this then leads to a beautiful part that Billy alluded to. That's very poignant story about the fox when we go down to Steven's bunker. And FYI, this is the point of no return with Steven's bunker.
Yeah, you're done at this point. There's no coming out. At any other point, you can backtrack as far as you want. But this is it. Which is fitting, because for the character of Steven, I mean, this is it. He has and one of his last communications with Kate, he knows that it's hopeless, and both of them are going to have to kill themselves, essentially.
Well, this is the funny part of the game to me. Because it was just like, I'm going to threaten you. You're not going to get me. And then it's just like he ends up killing himself, like, accidentally. Yeah. So it's so funny to be like, you thought he was going to... Yeah. You literally did something stupid, knew what this thing was. You was trying to threaten it to stop it for some reason. This particle don't know what a threat is. And then you end up killing yourself because your stupidity.
Now, this is the only weird part. It's the only part where I think that the pattern shows... maybe something other than good intentions. Is he's doused himself in gasoline. He is, after this story he's telling that I think kind of, explains a good deal of maybe what the pattern is doing unintentionally. He is confronted by it. And like Ed's saying, he is very hostile, very angry. But what happens is, in the pattern, in the lights, he sees Kate. And he's so taken aback by it that he unintentionally drops his lighter and ends up killing himself then. But and we later find out that, Kate states that Stephen and Lizzie are together, and whatever this is that's waiting for them. So I'm confused. Everybody saw their person. From Wendy saw her husband. Frank saw his wife. Of why it would present him with this image of Kate, if for no other reason, just jar him, because Kate is not the person that he winds up with. And I don't know if there was just something more to it at that point. I don't know if Kate and the light were kind of merged together at this point, or what it is exactly, why that's what was presented to him. I thought was just a little bit confusing, because it kind of is breaking away, from what we've seen throughout the rest of the game in terms of what other people see.
That was, yeah, I don't know if it was kind of I'm going to make you feel guilty, you piece of poo, for everything you've done.
And once again, there is an instance of someone else that's done something, kind of reprehensible throughout the game. Stephen, who has, killed this man.
Yes.
And he also is amongst the only few characters that get a kind of grisly demise before he's taken away. You had Sean and Di that got hit by the train, and now you have Stephen. And I thought that was if one was going to take their own life, that's a harsh way. And I almost wonder if it's a punishment of sorts, because he knows and he feels that he's been running around trying to correct this and trying to minimize this damage, but he knows that he is at the root of what caused it. So I don't know if this is like a self-imposed sort of punishment, because he
was just doing it to show, just to get off, be like, you're not going to take me, I'm going to take myself. You're not going to one up me. That's what it really was about. Because it's just like, why would you that this particle's taking people's life? Why would you have all this gas? Don't know how he got the gas. Just douse yourself with it and everything around it, and then throw up a light, like a match. Really, this thing went through telephone lines. What makes you think that it's afraid of some fire? Like, really, dude? Like, it's been taking people's lives, and you think a match is going to stop it? Nah.
I think he was planning on committing suicide through self-immolation. Like, that's 100%. And there are some phone calls along the way where he's talking to Kate rather than Lizzie, and he's telling her that he loves her. If he was like, he was making, he angers me a little bit. How we were talking, we were hinting that Frank was a bit of a coward. I think Steven's a bit of a coward, because you get to go to the bunker while everyone else has to get gassed, and you're going to go and survey the damage. That bunker was big enough for the whole dang town.
Yeah. He's a very problematic character, and he is someone that is. And I think that's the theme, even with his relationships throughout the game. He's someone that is just creating these problems for himself and then trying to run from them, and trying to fix them. But he's fixing them, not caring what the cost is to anyone else but himself. He was fine killing a guy so he could have some supplies, or bombing the town to try to fix this. And he's very selfish, leaving Lizzie there at the tracks because he decided to go another route with things. So he's a character. I don't think we're supposed to like him by any means. And especially as it goes on, he's someone that just has imposed a lot of problems on people to a great extent.
He's an indecisive person.
Yes.
He cannot make a decision. I think what he tried to do is he knew he made a mistake and he's trying to save face. So, he's doing one thing with Liz, trying to save face with Katie to save whatever relationship that they have. And he's very indecisive. He doesn't know what he wants. And he doesn't know. The only thing that he knows that in this game that I took away is that he doesn't want to be taken away from the particle, from the orb, for the orb. So he's going to kill himself. He could have easily get on the train and been with Liz with the baby. What it was going to not matter. They were going to be together anyway and gone together. Marriage and being divorced don't mean nothing if people are being taken away. You're going to break Katie's heart, but I think Katie has already come to the realization that you don't love her, that he doesn't love her no more. So what's going to happen is I'm just going to focus on the task that I was sent to, and my mind is going to be there. I already got my anger out on Liz. It is what it is, and I'm going to keep doing. And I think Steven was just completely indecisive. He couldn't make up his mind what he wanted. He was just trying to save face. And yeah, I think he was trying to fix things, but he was making things worse while trying to fix them.
Not my favorite character, that is for sure.
No, and he's definitely one that the more you learn about, it's usually the opposite in this game. The more you learn about these characters, you kind of start to see why they might be the way they are, and they kind of get a redeeming thing to them. He doesn't. He becomes a more cowardly character as we go along, and that who really just kind of uses people. I mean, people are just kind of there, and if he has to go through them to reach his means, then that's fine.
So him and his mama suck.
Yeah.
Apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
They both the antagonists.
Oh man, they're just tag teaming against Kate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which?
Oh,
go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say that we get plenty of Kate.
Yes.
Kind of immediately after this. Your speculation. And you finally get to go to your observatory that was locked up at the beginning. That had to be a vindication for you.
Oh yeah, but now you can't go anywhere else.
Exactly.
Now you can't. That's right. Hey, you can't have it all. You can have one thing or the other. But I was you go to the different parts of the observatory, and you're given some pretty pertinent bits of dialogue each time you go through. And I feel like this is where they try to kind of tie up loose ends, if the best they can. They obviously don't want to spell all this out for you. But I thought that those are probably, and thankfully I don't think you can miss them, some of the most important bits of dialogue throughout the entire game. As Kate, who has kind of locked herself in and has just been studying this and communicating with it. I think her character has probably the most important information throughout the game to kind of divulge.
I agree. And that is, again, this game is beautiful. The ending section, it is nighttime. The stars are out. The pattern is swirled all over. There are 7 towers. How many towers?
It was 6 or 7.
6 or 7 towers.
Yeah.
So but it's easy to follow because each one is numbered. So just go in numerical order, and you learn. Kate reveals that the pattern gives everyone what they want, which we've said a few times, where people end up with whom they're meant to be, and it's just real. It's beautiful. It's stunning. And for the last tower, you can't enter any of the towers except the last one.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then you see this single chair and a radio. This light is shining on it, and you activate the radio, and Kate starts talking. And the end is this, the pattern looks as though it's looking down on her, and she's reaching out for the pattern. And she comes out and says, I become one with the pattern, and the pattern is my person.
Yes. Yes. And I think it's a wonderful ending. It's a beautiful ending because I think you have two outsiders, and I can imagine 1984. We're talking about the early 80s. 1980s, a black woman as a scientist. It probably wasn't an easy road for her. Which means she was probably in school in the 70s, and country still ain't doing too great now. We weren't doing much. We weren't doing good back then either. With that, and I think a woman, African American woman, with that level of intelligence and going through the college system, and then trying to go into a field that is probably older white males for the most part. She probably experienced being an outsider the majority of her life. And so she's found something else that has kind of just been similar to her situation, just kind of, floating around out there, kind of by itself. And I think for those two to kind of come together was nice. I think it's unconventional because we find that Jeremy has kind of been connected with God, I guess, or what he perceives to be. And everyone's we talked about Wendy and her husband. We talked Frank and his wife. And Stephen is with Lizzie now, which alludes to the fact that that was who was his person. So I thought that was interesting, and I thought that was kind of a fitting end. It's a little strange. I don't know what they talk about exactly, but she seems to have a good deal of happiness, and she seems to be happy for everyone. And it's one of the weirdest games in that it's an extraordinarily happy ending, but it's in the darkest possible kind of setting. It's strange. It's a weird juxtaposition of a happy ending, but it's got a real somber tone to it at the same time.
Well, it's about acceptance. What are you going to accept? And I think Katie is the only character. Katie and Rachel are the only two characters, and maybe the priest, Jeremy, are the only characters that accept what's going on. They're accepting death. They know that there isn't. They know that death doesn't bring a good light to the living, but there's a form of peace there when you accept what's going to go on. Everybody else was just like running away, dealing with their emotions and trying to understand and handle things. And it was just like Rachel held the baby, sang and did what she had to do and accepted what was going to come. Jeremy, he did his best to make the town what it is and everything and help out. And when he had his weakness, he had his fear, but he accepted the fact that, people are losing their lives. And so when it's his time to come, he's going to accept it and making sure that when it happened, that it's a peaceful taken away. And Katie, yeah, she's just like, I know that I have my ups, I have my downs, I will have my anger, but I now realize what everything was meant to be. I accept that. So with that acceptance, can you accept me? And or and accepted her, and she knew what was going to happen. And now everybody's going to the rapture, So
I kind of wonder. You guys make some really good points I hadn't even considered, and.
Yeah. We do what we can.
And I kind of wonder if the pattern represents her scientific pursuits and her love of knowledge, her love of discovery, her love of learning. That's some people are married to their work. They devote their whole lives to science, discovery, ambition. And there are some people who can balance it with a healthy relationship with someone else or a family. But for Kate, and like you said, Billy, it's really easy to forget that we are in 1984 as far as the context. So she probably was in her 20s or 30s. She probably saw some pretty horrible things as an American Black woman. And I feel like Ed, you said acceptance, and it's just a sense of peace. And you guys think, we don't know the answer, But is it just Yachten that is affected, or is it the whole world?
It's the whole world.
Yeah, I was
Everybody's
under
gone.
the impression. Yeah, I was under the impression that, and I think that's the point where kind of Steven abandons, the idea of getting away with Lizzie. 'Cause I think he even realizes that it's a worldwide thing
Yeah.
at this point in time, and kind of there's no hope here on Earth, I guess. So yeah, I was under the impression that it quickly spread outside of the town.
Well, do you guys have any other thoughts? Something we didn't talk about, or something you'd like to say about this game?
This game, I don't like the speed of the walking. This
Yes.
is a slug simulation. This is not a walking simulator. Like the speed and not having a map in this game are the worst things.
Yeah,
in this
map.
the map would have been nice, because the mechanic is following those orbs around to advance the story, which sometimes aren't easy to find, and sometimes it's hard to figure out where they want you to go. So yeah, map, or at least there's bulletin boards all over town. So maybe even just having a little map on those with a little "you are here" would have went a long way. Hmm?
They do have those. They do have maps. Okay, you just reminded me, Billy. They do have maps, but they do not stay with you.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. It doesn't stay with you. But yeah, it is a slow-moving game, and I was discussing before. I guess it's just because this thing is packed with snippets of dialogue and things you can trigger as you go along. And I guess it's really to keep you from running through and missing things as you go. You're kind of forced to take this slow walk and really take in the environment. Unfortunately, that can work the opposite. I mean, I could see people just wanting to advance things along and looking across to the other side of town and seeing some houses and thinking, oh, it's going to take a while to get over there.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to do that today. But if you're completely kind of invested in the setting and the story, you're going to want to find everything that you can. But I do think it's going to be one of those that for people that already complain about these games being on the slow side, this is definitely, it's going to be more than they can handle. And they do say that you can run sort of on here. I think you hold down one of the trigger buttons.
Yeah.
That's not a run. That's not.
It's a brisk. It's a jog.
Yes, that is a little bit. Yeah, it may not even be a jog. It's the normal speed is a crawl, and the run button is maybe a slow walk. But it's not an environment I personally mind walking through at a slower pace. But I love just kind of taking in every detail you can. It can be a little off-putting though. For some folks, and definitely even walking, sim enthusiasts. But this might bring it down a little bit. This might be too slow for you. But if you'll walk around slowly through this game, I think there's an awesome story, and Ed touched on it. There's some tremendous voice acting in this game. They did a wonderful job, and it had to be because there's nothing else to really work off of. There's just scenery. There are no character models or anything like that. There are no faces to look at for expression. So these voice actors really had to get across not just the dialogue, but they had to make you, know what they were feeling also. Yeah. And I thought they did a wonderful job. Ed pointed out Father Jeremy especially. He just does a great job of just presenting at first kind of that hopefulness, and you can tell and you can hear that it's starting to slip away from him, the hopefulness and the faith a little bit. But at the same time, you can tell through the voice acting that even though he feels that way, he's still putting on a brave face for everybody else. And for someone to be able to get that across without the aid of anything visual, I think is tremendous. And I think the voice cast for this, did one of the better jobs of probably any game we're going to review.
It's so beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And did you guys notice that even the house, spoiler, well, I'm assuming if you're listening to this episode, you've played the game.
It's ruined. It's ruined already.
Right.
I really love the details. So I will explore every dang house and store that has an open door. There are some houses you cannot enter.
Yeah.
However, if you walk around and kind of look through the windows, it looks like they've kind of tried to make the houses look as believable and truly immerse you, because you might see some furniture and it moves with you. So I have to, now this is a question. Who are we in the game?
Ed, you can handle it first if you want to.
So we are actually Katie in the game.
I came under the same, I only came under that impression because at the end, that last scene with the radio in the chair, the only time you finally cannot control the camera or anything like that is once she comes into view to communicate with the pattern directly, and finally, be taken up by the pattern. And I just assume she is kind of the last one there. Maybe she's the one going out there and just kind of surveying. She's one with the pattern at this point, I assume, and that's why you can't see. We talked about being able to hear someone moving along, but you look down in most of these games, you can see feet, you can see hands.
Yeah.
But she's kind of incorporated with the pattern at this point, and maybe just kind of surveying things before she or they as together take off to wherever everyone's venturing to.
What a beautiful game! It has its little frustrations. It can be slow. The triggering some of the activity of the pattern, that was, I had to get a little help.
The orb can vanish and not appear for a long time.
Exactly.
There are times where the behavior of the orbs is a little strange. I was telling Ed an example was with Father Jeremy, his very last scene inside the church. I could not get the orb to budge from the steps outside of the church. And I could not really get it to go anywhere. It just was kind of moving between two different spots, and I kept going back and forth, back and forth. And finally, there was just something random, a random little scene with him further down the street that I needed to trigger, and then I could walk up and do it. But the orb at that point in time wasn't pointing me in that direction. So there is a little frustration with that. You mentioned the kind of the motion controls that usually if I see those implemented, it's to make it more immersive. It didn't add anything. If anything, it was a little bit of, like you're saying, a little frustration because it's not very precise with what it wants from you. I mean, it's a game with faults. It's very slow paced, but that's a plus to some people. Some it won't be. But the presentation is top notch. The story it tells is great, and I think it does enough to make for a satisfying conclusion. Also, personally, there are some things I am wondering how they work or why this happened or things like that. But at the same time, I don't feel like it just kind of left me in the dark either. I think it gave me a little something to work with, and fortunately, it's like most of these games we play. There's a pretty active community that has explore the details of this and talk about it and offer their own kind of speculation. So that it does make for something interesting to do once you finish the game. I always love that. Same reason people might listen to this is just to, listen to our own speculation about it. And I do implore people to go out there and read some of the things people have put down also, because there are so many viewpoints and so many opinions. And I think with this game, it's a very individualized experience also. Some people might think that, what the pattern did is wrong. and it's hard to say if the ultimate goal is, happiness with the one person you're supposed to be with. That's tremendous. But what about the other people kind of involved in your life? Yes, you're with your partner for good, but what about close family? What about all right, I'm with my wife. What about my child? Or things like that. If it's just a one-to-one, it's something that I guess it's a happy ending of sorts. But you could definitely kind of dig in and find real kind of problems with it. It's not a perfect solution, I don't think, that the pattern has, but I think it was something done with good intentions in mind.
I really appreciate your letting me host this one, Ed. It's a beautiful game and makes me want to go to England even more than I already do.
That's it.
Get some fish and chips.
That's it. Go down to the pub.
Yeah.
Well, everybody, that has been it. Everybody's gone to the Rapture. We're going to do quick plugs. Billy, where can we find you?
You can find me and the other fellas I do my thing with on the Retrovaniacs podcast. You can find us just about everywhere. There are podcasts, which are more places. They're popping up left and right. But if podcast is hosted on there, you can find Retrovaniacs. You can find us on Twitter, same handle, Retrovaniacs. You can find us on Twitch. I am attempting to get on there more and more, but we got another fella that is old Jeremy P from the podcast. He is on there daily, just about, at Retrovaniacs. And if you can't remember that for whatever reason, you can just head over to retrovania.net. That's just kind of our front page. It has a form if you want to get in touch with us, from everything to just say hey, to recommend a game, anything like that. And it has all the kind of pertinent links to all of our things.
All right. So that's where can we find you?
I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Fairy Crypt. I do have to approve you on Instagram because there are a lot of weird bots and creepy people who try
Yes.
It's not public anymore. Twitter is public though. And I'm also with Another Zelda podcast. I'm also with Boss Rush Games, and I bother Ed all the time.
I can't wait for your 1v1. We'll talk about that later. You guys can find me on Twitter at that retro code. You can check out more episodes of Talk of the Walk here on Boss Rush Games. Check out Nintendo Power Block. Check out Recap, Optional Opinion on SoundCloud, and other podcast apps here on Boss Rush Games. Now, everybody, we got 2 games coming up for Talk the Walk. The first one is Gris. Gris. You can find that on Switch, Steam, and on PlayStation 4. That's going to be our next episode. But we also got another one ready to go. So get your coffee, because everybody, we are discussing Coffee Talk. You guys can find this on Xbox One. I believe it's on PlayStation. I'm not sure. It is on Switch, and it is on PC. So you guys, I do recommend you guys to go play Coffee Talk and play Gris, because we got some good discussions. Definitely when we come to Coffee Talk, because all I can say is you want to get a cup of coffee and join us for that discussion. Oh, you're gonna love Gris. Trust me, you're going to love Gris. But Coffee Talk, yeah, you're going to want to get your coffee for that one. With that, everybody, have a great week and have a great weekend. And if you're gonna go walking, make sure you talk about it. And if not, talk about the walk when you can. With that, everybody, we'll see you later. Bye, everybody.
Bye.